Hey everyone, it's Montero. This Game Changers EMEA off-season has been full of huge roster moves, and today we're doing something different with it. Instead of just listing changes, we're ranking them. Who made the best upgrades, and who might be struggling towards the start of the season. Let's break it all down and see which teams are set for success, and who's got some work to do. I think one of the easy teams to start off with is G2. I think we can just put them straight up there, especially with some of the exciting changes that they're bringing in this split, with Nello joining the team. She's an experienced veteran who previously been playing on Karmine Corp, but also from 10-star Nova back in the early GC days in like 2021. And Mimi remaining as IGL, role swaps are looking likely, along with one of the players in the current roster stepping up to fill the shoes left by Rescue into that duelist position, likely to be Vanya. She's definitely someone that I can see filling that role. But this team, it's relying more on experience now, and with the excessive and aggressive talent that they already have under their wings with the additions that we saw in the previous years of Vanya and Amy, I'm really excited to see this team. And with this powerhouse lineup, how will the experience be fighting to stay at the top? The next one is Karmine Corp. I'm going to put them into the promising tier. The changes are pretty extravagant. We've lost 4 players from the team that we saw last year. We're adding in Giantx, Alkia, Anasilia, and Safia all around glance. So it's definitely a promising lineup for me if you're looking at the individual pieces, but also the experience that's packed into this roster, especially as Giantx stepping in as the IGL, bringing some strong flashes and support play from her previous team of Valiant. Alkia, your ex-BBL Queen duelist, who generally just thrives in aggressive situations and of the chaos of the round. And Anasilia is finally getting her shot at tier 1 after grinding contenders with Placahand last year. And Safia is such a versatile sentinel who's shown capability with controllers and duelists in NASR. Actually, Safia and Alkia just won an off-season Wingwoman event at the end of last year, and hopefully the signs that we saw there of the winning victory can be carried over into this 2025 season with KC. It is a big risk, but also has an opportunity for a big reward with this massive rebuild. The next team that we're going to be doing is Giantx. I think this is the only other team that I'm going to be putting in the exciting tier based on what I saw from them in 2024 as a whole, but also the pieces that they're bringing in for 2025, which is Nami, the ex-NASR IGL, and also Eva, the ex-BBL Queens player. And with seemingly Nami taking over these IGL duties, it is likely to be an entire structure and leadership overhaul. I have known and watched Nami in previous teams, obviously on NASR last year, and generally really enjoy the style of Valorant she brings to the table, which is why Giantx is in that exciting tier for the roster changes. But also Eva strengthens and keeps intact the Turkish core of this roster, and playing in a key supportive role as Sova, genuinely looking towards Smithette, who is going to be likely remaining the star duelist, but it's how that new structure will enable her, along with how Ava can facilitate from within this roster. Zero had shown exponential growth last year, which was her first year as IGL, making it all the way to champs in Berlin. Was the IGL change the right call, or will it slow them down in regards to the role that they were starting to hit in the previous year? I have no doubts on the IGL capability of Nami, but it's more of how the dynamics within this team might change. Next one let's put in is Blackhand. I think we'll put them with underdogs with potential. It is a massive rehaul of the roster with only 1 player remaining, Latu. It's similar to the KC, and I think we're only putting them in the underdog section. They aren't mainstays of tier 1. This team had been gate kept realistically all of 2024. They were always in making deep runs in contenders, but unfortunately we were never able to actually get that ascension spot into tier 1 Game Changers EMEA. But let's talk about the actual changes on the roster, with EMEA coming in, who's been dominating on the flash flex roles, losing confidence in the close qualifier with a couple of brazen plays. Hated the most is bringing such a nice, consistent, supportive play, being able to add depth to the roster. Barry X genuinely is a mechanical beast, dropping almost 50 frags in one map just to qualify to this event. And then Wen's obviously adding a huge stability to balancing out the firepower heavy team. And I think this one is the story of the fact that they finally made it, even though maybe with a completely different roster than that they were trying before. It's the real challenge now that's going to be beginning. Exciting young talent stepping up. We have two 16-year-old demons on this roster, and if they can dial back a smidge of over-aggression that was starting to show in the closed qualifier, they're going to be such a real threat. So that's why I've put them in underdogs with the potential. Next team that we're going to be doing is NASR Ignite, and I do love the pieces on this roster in regards to individual players, but I'm just going to put them in unproven. I will explain why. The roles just aren't super clear to me, with a lot of possibility of who's going to be playing duelist, who is actually going to be filling the recon role, which is something that I'm not entirely sure about, possibly just an overhaul of roles. But Ikyu was playing on focus and she was there as a duelist. She was playing really well. Alessia is likely to stay on as the sentinel, and then Nidvilko on the controller, who brings a lot of experience, admittedly, and synergy with the ex-MDK core. And then also Superfrog, who used to play on Heroic as that Sentinel Clash as well, but has also played Duelist in the past. So I thought that might have been a role flexibility, but I generally have questions on who's going to go into the recon role, as Maya Meow has excelled on flashes before, likely to be staying onto that role. And she actually even subbed in for focus one time in split 2 for Ikkyo, so there's a little bit of a crossover there. But to me, it's more of unproven as a whole. There's a little bit of questioning in regards to how the synergy and how the roles are going to be looking, but there's also been some past relegation struggles. Majority of these players had made it into T1 GC in 2024, obviously barring Maya Meow, who subbed in, but they had all been relegated. So they do have the experience, it is there. Roles are a little bit foggy, but let's hope they can turn it into wins and be able to even out and really prove me wrong, because I do love the pieces that have gone into this. I just want to see how it's going to work in the longer term. Zarence Mint. I'm going to be putting them into the minimal no changes category, just based on the fact that they've had an upgrade in regards to bringing Dream into the roster, an ex-Valiant player, someone who has decent experience in tier 1, but also excels on her role and also just in the firepower department as well. And she also adds some extra depth. On her previous team, Valiant has been proven on a mix of sentinels and controllers, which opens up more confidence for ranging compositions. Especially with Lupiot continuing leading as IGL, this reinforces the team's synergy. So it's, again, honestly, it's hats off to her, along with the way she led them through that DVM game to qualify. They generally looked in control for a large majority of the 3-map series. Then we're looking at Akita, who remains a key entry player, with entry stats leaving Zarence with a 5v4 majority for the rounds that we saw them play in the closed qualifier. The only thing that concerns me for this roster is, with Akita constantly finding the first pick, securing early 4v5s, the question is, will this be sustainable against stronger teams in the main event rather than just in the closed qualifier? Next, we're going to be doing SK Nebula. I've put them for underdogs with potential, just based on it's a full new roster. Like just full new roster. And again, similar to when we were talking about Blackhand, is like we've seen them play in regards to the close qualifiers. So I'm not going to be putting them in unproven, because we've seen a little bit, right? Along with SK Nebula being formed of some pretty experienced players, one being Devil Axer, who is a Cypher Viper resident of this team, but also on MDK played flashes, so there's a lot of flexibility for Jademar to play around with in regards to comps. Jolina converting to duelists, needing to prove consistency at this level, but signs are looking good so far. And honestly, she was never lacking firepower on Giantx when she was a controller, so maybe she's been freed from the shackles of that role. Purity and Suspect, or now Cabot, I'm not too sure which they go by now, but they bring strong flex options as well, and generally it was one of my favorite deadlocks to watch in 2024. Jade Moore adds another presence with hyper flexibility on flashes and reveal initiators, making them a pretty well-rounded team. It's just more of the conversation of they're in the main event now, what can they do with it? What upsets are we going to be seeing from them? And especially with the new format, will they hold up against Tier 1 teams? With recent successes at Project Queens, was that just the warm-up? The next thing that we're going to be doing is Heroic Valkyries. I'm going to be putting them in the promising tier just because I think this is a roster that isn't going to be changed much, but the piece that they're adding in is one that I love to watch. In the previous year, especially when she was on Giantx, Miori is coming in, completing the squad for the 2025 season, and it seems that she is being integrated seamlessly, maintaining the team's established synergy, or at least from what we can see from the closed qualifier, except that one diffuse round. We won't talk about it. With strong fragging power across the board, this makes them one of the most well-balanced rosters in Split 1, I believe, and possibly for the rest of the year. Definitely looking to be in the top echelons of the groups, but also making deeper runs into playoffs. No overhauls, just one player, and with it only being the Sentinel that's being changed, there shouldn't be too many teething issues as they're going into the T1 composition range compared to the closed qualifier, since they ran through it. They qualified in the quickest way possible, 2-0, 2-0, and then they've already booked their ticket. Only question is, can they keep that momentum going into the main event? The next team that I'm going to be looking at is Lunar, the only unsigned team in Game Changers EMEA, so please, someone change that. But with no major changes in regards to the ex-Valiant core that they've been able to maintain from the previous split, a cool addition that they've added is Elsie, who has taken the mantle of IGL. I do remember playing with her back when she was just a little baby, when she was 16, and seeing her now go through that close qualifier. There was a couple of back-to-back games that were at a massive deficit. I think there was like a 10-2 and a 10-4 there, and generally leading her team through that experience. They made it through with those impressive comebacks to close out the series that booked them the ticket. Here, the only question I have to pose is, realistically, those top tier teams aren't going to be fumbling a 10-4 lead or fumbling even a 10-2. So looking at this, they might have a couple more struggles if they can't hit the ground running, but also will the lack of organizational support hold them back? But as the ultimate underdog, can they shock some of the higher up teams in GC? Last, but definitely not least, we have alternate ATTAX Ruby, who we're going to be putting into the minimal/no changes category. And I think it's very obvious is because they've made absolutely zero changes in as long as I can remember this team for. So they really are taking the synergy to the max. One of the players that I want to highlight is Jade, specifically on Breach, on Lotus in the closed qualifier, because genuinely I feel every time I see this roster on that map and they're starting to struggle, it is Jade that steps up into that position, and while also initiating and enabling her duelist Ellie, another standout player on this roster, Jade's Breach consistently there to help and also to put herself in chaos and come out on top. Obviously, no changes, no problem, but let's see how they fare up against some of the teams that have had major overhauls in this off-season, but also some of the teams that have come up from Tier 2 Game Changers. And that wraps up our Game Changers EMEA roster tier list with exciting upgrades, promising rebuilds, and teams looking to prove themselves, as this season is set to be highly competitive. This is a huge shift from the previous format and could really benefit teams like Giantx, who are adjusting to a new IGL system, or complete rebuilt rosters like Karmine Corp, giving them way more time to gel and improve over a large number of games. What do you think? which team made the best moves. Let me know in the comments, and if there's any other GC Valorant content that you'd love to see, drop your ideas below. If you've liked this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe for more esports content, and I'll see you guys for the split one. Is that a bit harsh? I feel that's a bit harsh.